I saw you earlier than that.
Really?
In Maryland. I was playing with Rhonda Vincent's family.
What happens when a world-class musician's own body turns against the very instrument she trained her entire life to perfect? And what would it take for someone at the peak of their career to walk away from everything they'd built? The woman who once filled concert halls and recording studios began to drift from view. Alison Krauss had become a household name in bluegrass and country music, her voice carrying a natural sweetness that made listeners stop and listen. But then something changed. Her tours became rare. Her albums came less often. She moved through public life as if she wanted the world to forget. For years, people wondered. Rumors spread. Some believed she couldn't keep up with the cost of fame. Others thought she'd simply lost interest. But when she finally revealed the real reason, it turned out to be far from what anyone had imagined. Her decision came from something more personal and profound than success, fear, or failure. Alison's story began in Decatur, Illinois, where music filled her home from the start. At just 5 years old, she picked up the violin. A few years later, she discovered the fiddle in bluegrass, and the two became part of her identity. By age 8, she was entering fiddling contests in her region, winning awards and making a name for herself in local circles. Before turning 15, she had already recorded for a label. At 14, she signed with Rounder Records, and her first solo album came out in 1987 when she was still a teenager. Soon after, she joined the band Union Station, the group that would stay tied to her name for decades. But here's what most people don't realize about her rise to fame. Her success wasn't built on flash or noise. Alison climbed by depth, by choosing what to add and what to leave out. Her 1990 album, I've Got That Old Feeling, climbed into the country charts and earned her first Grammy Award. In 1992, Every Time You Say Goodbye with Union Station won a Grammy for Best Bluegrass Album. At 21, she became one of the youngest members of the Grand Ole Opry, standing alongside country stars and holding her own. Through the late 1990s and early 2000s, she continued to release albums that gathered dozens of Grammy Awards. Her work on the Oh Brother, Where Art Thou soundtrack exposed her voice to millions who might never have encountered bluegrass. Her collaboration with Robert Plant on Raising Sand became one of the most celebrated partnerships in modern Americana music, winning multiple Grammy Awards. Everything seemed perfect. She had earned trust, she had built a legacy, she had connected with folk fans and mainstream listeners alike. But underneath all that success, she sensed trouble brewing. The instrument she relied on most, her voice, began to betray her. She walked into recording studios and found the throat that once responded with ease, now locked up. She walked on stage and felt the sound drain. The change didn't happen overnight. It crept in step by step until the weight could no longer be ignored. Around 2013, Alison faced a devastating diagnosis: dysphonia. Doctors told her that her vocal cords were contracting, that the throat muscles were tightening, and that her voice box sometimes shut down altogether. The very instrument she had trained all her life to perfect had turned against her. But it wasn't just physical. The condition revealed something deeper about what was happening to her. Alison realized she wasn't just reacting to physical strain, but to mental exhaustion. When her mind was filled with too many thoughts, when she walked into a recording session carrying the weight of work or personal worries, her body would shut down. Her focus would slip and the music would fade. She tried to carry on. She delayed projects. She limited her touring. She worked with a vocal coach to pull apart what was happening. But the condition persisted. During tracking sessions, the throat would clench. She would stop, wait, try again. Sometimes the vocal cord spasms happened mid-session. The turning point arrived when she accepted that the voice had become fragile and that she could no longer ignore the signs. She recognized that continuing as before would risk something permanent. Each time she canceled a date, each time she heard her voice not sing like before, It broke her. So she made a hard choice to stop, to heal, and to reset before returning. It was not surrender, but self-preservation. And here's what happened during those silent years that changed everything. After Alison Krauss stepped away from the stage, her days changed completely. The pressure of perfect sound faded into stillness. She woke up without plans to rehearse or catch flights. She began to pay attention to ordinary things, the sound of rain, the stillness of night, the feel of quiet mornings. For someone who had lived most of her life in music, stepping away felt like losing direction. She tried to fill the silence with routine tasks, but deep down she knew she was trying to keep herself from thinking too much. The absence of singing left a strange emptiness. Alison explored therapy and vocal rehabilitation. She met specialists who guided her through slow exercises. Each day she worked gently with her throat, learning how to relax it and let air flow again. She celebrated small victories like holding a note longer or finishing a phrase without tension. Away from music, she also rediscovered her love for the fiddle. Playing it didn't strain her voice. She spent hours moving the bow across strings, letting melody come out freely. She played not for audiences, but for herself. The instrument carried her through the most uncertain days. As months turned into years, Alison began to sense herself healing. The perfectionism that once haunted her started to ease. She no longer chased flawless sounds. She began to understand that music could exist even with imperfections. What mattered most was truth, not perfection. When offers to perform again started to show up, she turned many down at first. She wanted to be sure she was ready. When she finally felt strong enough, she agreed to work on selected projects. One of them led to Windy City, a record that carried the softness of her new phase. It reflected her journey through stillness and recovery. After Alison Krauss returned to music, her story took on new meaning. People no longer saw her only as a voice that shaped bluegrass. They saw her as someone who had faced loss, rebuilt herself, and found a way to keep her gift alive. The years she had spent healing became part of her legacy. When she finally admitted the real reason she quit, it was because her voice faltered, her mind cracked under pressure, and she chose to step out of the limelight to protect what mattered most. The silence she kept for years was not emptiness, but recovery. It became a time to rebuild what had been broken by years of strain. Her journey proved that stepping back could sometimes be the only way forward. She stood before the world not as a fallen star, but as a woman who had learned how to fight for her craft in a different way. Her career became a symbol of how to rebuild without losing identity. And that's the truth behind Alison Krauss's sudden disappearance, a story not of giving up, but of survival, healing, and finding the courage to return.